Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to Cardiff City World. We're here for the breakdown, which in season is a tactical analysis, look at the game, 5 things we learned, bit of everything. But obviously through the pre-season, we have different things to break down. So this evening, we're going to have a look at some different things. Essentially, we're going to look at some striker targets that have been linked with a club and maybe who we think they could go for, some loan targets, and whatever comes up, really. We'll have a good old chit-chat. But it's usually just me and myself and I. But I'm joined by Mr. Matthew Angel from the Flower Hour. He was feeling the twitch after he missed last night. He was missing doing podcasts. So he had to get in on one.
No fault of my own that was last night, mind. Let's get
get it all on Rob. It's all Rob's fault. How dare
I think you're the nasty sickness bug doing the rounds over with Mr. Boyle. So
yeah, and he can't
as well.
Thing is, mate, right? It's when you get like a sickness bug and you've got a young kids, it just goes round and round and round. It's brutal, mate. Absolutely brutal. I remember years back, like we had a sickness bug, and me and my missus were like throwing up everywhere, and like the younger two was sick as well, and the older one, who's obviously like 20 now, was like he's only about 7 or 8, like, and he was like looking after all of us. He was the only one who wasn't ill. And he was like bringing cups of water and trying to make soup and that. Bless him. But there we go. It's such his life, mate. So I'm going to start on a bit of a rogue one, actually. I want to know sort of 3 categories for some of the Cardiff players. The ones who are unsellable at any price. The ones who you'd sell begrudgingly, if a certain price was met. And then the ones you'd actively look to get out, like you'd actively be pushing to sort of sell, whether that's for a reason or whether that's to raise money. I'm kind of interested in which ones fall where from the current Cardiff City squad as it is. Let's start with the ones you'd actively look to be trying to move along, mate. Is there?
I don't think there would be any shock in. And obviously, this is just my opinion. You haven't kind of preempted me at all or anything, but I think Callum Robinson would be one on a high wage, as far as I'm aware. Obviously, you've had his issues with the manager this season, so you'd be top my list. Probably Romeo as well, but I think that obviously depend on whether NG goes and who we're able to bring in. Who else? Obviously, they've announced a retained list, and the ones that are going, Sawyers, Ojo, and I don't think there was any shocks there, was it really? No. I was a little bit shocked at some of the youngsters. That Javier Benjamin, I think they've let him go, haven't they?
Yeah, he's played a bit of game. He's had a bit of game time as well, haven't he? So
yeah, and I've gone down and looked at. Am I right in saying he captained the under-23s? I think he was, wasn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
So that was a bit of a shock for me, really, but it goes to show how cutthroat it is, doesn't it? That, if they don't see him progressing into the first team, then... But I just found it weird where you got your captain and then he's gone type of thing. But
yeah, I mean, I don't know if there could be anything to it, and it could be like attitude. It could be he could be, it could be that he wants to move on as well. You never know. Like, he might feel that he's at a standard and an age where he wants to be playing. And perhaps he can go and play in League One or something and get regular football. But I agree, that was the one which was a bit strange because he was in the first team squad before, Joel Colwell, before Ashford, before all of those guys came in towards the end of the season. Xavier Benjamin played. I think he played in a couple of EFL games as well, EFL Cup games.
I'm sure he did. Sure he did.
But yeah, I think what about the sort of you'd sell if the price was right kind of category? Anyone fall into that? Like you don't really want to sell them, but
I think it's difficult. Well, for me then to say, potentially Ryan Wintle, maybe.
See, so that's straight away. That's the difference I think between me and you. He's one where if you've got to raise funds, so that if we assume Vincent Tan's not going to make like 5 or 8 million available to the manager because he hasn't got it or whatever, or we haven't got it because of FFP, and you've got to raise funds for transfers. He's on my list where I can get some money for him, and it doesn't damage the squads, like irreparably. Like you can bring someone else in who's probably a bit more attacking minded, or could do the same things as what Wintle can do, but also maybe a bit more on the ball sort of thing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what
try and move.
It'll be interesting to see what the manager makes of Adams now after his loan spell at Derby. He kind of lit the world up at Derby, didn't he, with his performances? I don't think he scored many goals, but I think they really liked his work ethic and stuff like that. So it'd be interesting to see if he's in the thinking, and whether they could afford to lose Wintle then, or perhaps even lose both. It's difficult.
I think with Ivo Adams, it's clear like he wasn't really in the manager's plans, or they wouldn't have let him go. But also, I think realistically, he's gone to Derby. He's played week in, week out. He's going to want to play now. And he knows if he goes to Derby, they're going to build their midfield around him. Whereas here, at best, he's going to be back up for Cyprus, at best. I really don't think he's going to play many games ahead of Rolls.
I would imagine he'll go to Derby. I would imagine, to be honest.
And for me, I just think you got Rolls there who can be a sort of midfielder who's probing and whatnot on the ball, and you've also got Turnbull then who can do similar job but maybe a bit more mobile or a bit quicker. And then I think if you can get Wintle out and somebody else in who's good, aggressive, good defensively, but then also a bit technically more gifted, if you like, I think that improves the squad drastically. Because I do think, look, I like Ryan Wintle as a footballer. I like a lot of the things that he does, and I like the sort of attitude he brings to playing. But I don't think you can deny. I don't think anyone could deny that there was times last season when he did play alongside Siopis, where we just did not have the ability to play the ball through the lines and into the wingers, into the number 10. It was very, very lateral and just backwards. And I don't know. I wouldn't be devastated if Wintle stayed, but I think when I look at the squad, him, Romeo, Robinson, there's 3 players you can get money for. I think if Perry NG wants to have a go in the Premier League, I don't think we should deny him that, as long as we get at least 5 million for him. I do think that's I wouldn't accept less than 5 for him. And if no one's offering it, then sell the others. Because, just those 3 I mentioned, mate, you get a bit of cash for Robinson, I reckon, and the wages off the bill for FFP. Say Romeo, I don't think you get a lot in, but again, you get the wages off the bill. And Wintle the same. I think someone would pay million and a half for Wintle. And the other thing this is what I did today, and Pan made a good point the other day when I've said about Jordan James before, and when you total in is what they'll want for him, probably 5 or 6 million, and his wages and stuff like that, and that there potentially could be bigger clubs after him. It's very unlikely, but I guess my point all along was I would ask the question to Birmingham. I would say, if we give you Ryan Wintle and Callum Robinson plus, $1 million, would you be interested in a deal? If they say no, then right, move along. But I think it's worth asking the question.
Oh, 100%. If you don't ask, you don't get, do you? As simple as that.
No, and I think from their point of view, they get $1 million to get a bit of money in, but then they also get 2 players who were probably too good for League One, or certainly would be at the top end of League One in terms of their ability. And I think from Cardiff's point of view and Jordan James's point of view, obviously he's a Welshman, a Welsh international, coming to play at the capital, playing at the stadium where Wales play their home games. Maybe that's an attraction. You don't know. It's difficult to judge until you know what clubs are going to be interested in him, because I think he's that good, mate, that I wouldn't be surprised if a sort of top 10, top 12 Premier League club come in for him, because I think he is that good, and his age and factor in everything else.
And that's something that perhaps the bigger teams look at. And this is something I wanted to mention, because obviously there's been rumours about Caldwell and things like that. If Caldwell was to go then, say, to a Premier League club, and the chances are he's not going to play much football, would you be happy to see him go as long as there was something in his contract to say if he's not, we'd have first option on a loan move back for him.
I think if he was going, one, I would say the price has to be right, because too often over the years we've sold our talented youngsters or talented players for like nowhere near as much as what other clubs would have sold similar players for. So I would like to think that if we sell him, we would get top dollar. I would also, if he goes to a Premier League club, that sounds rough, mate.
Josh watching, he wanted to come and watch.
Yeah, that's right. It just sounds rough. So I would want top dollar. I'd also, if he's going to a Premier League club, I'd want to ask the question of whether you could get him back on loan for this season.
And potentially others as well.
Yeah, exactly that. And also, like you say, you definitely want either first refusal on his next move, or if they won't give you first refusal, you sort of say, right, well, then we want 20% sell-on clause or whatever.
Yeah.
But to me, he's almost on the unsellable list for me at the moment, because I think the age of him and the performance of him last year, I think he's on an upward curve.
Yeah.
So unless it's a deal that really, 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 really suits Cardiff, I wouldn't generally be interested in selling him. But I understand as well, we're in a position that Cardiff, we need money, don't we? We're not in a position if someone comes in and offers 6 million, they probably won't turn it down, unfortunately.
No, they wouldn't. But I just don't know. He was probably one of our most consistent players last year. But I just don't know if that step up is a little bit too soon.
Yeah, I agree. I think Southampton, Pan made a good point. He said he thought Southampton would have come in for him if they'd stayed in the Championship, that he thought they might come in for him with an eye on him playing in the Championship and then getting him up and being able to make the step up then, which I think is a kind of good way of looking at it. From a Cardiff point of view, mate, I would like to think that you can keep him for another couple of seasons and get like that sort of real upward in his performances and stuff, because I do think I think he'll have a good season this year, especially if we can get like a proper number 9 and a couple of good wingers as well on top of what we got. Like, I think we'll see the best of him, because like you said, he was probably one of our most consistent attacking players. And also, I thought like the team as a whole looked better with him in it. Every time he was not in the 11, we really seemed to struggle for a bit of creativity and a bit of urgency in that final third. But don't get me wrong, I don't think he had the perfect season. I know some people criticize like his lack of assists and stuff, but I think a lot of that was down to what was around him rather than his lack of ability, if you like. It's a bit similar to Siopis. Like when Siopis had his dip, I think I felt like he was trying to do the job of Joe Rawls as well as his own job, and he got a bit caught out of position and stuff like that. As soon as he went back to just being that defensive midfielder, I thought he was real good. And I thought, especially I mentioned this a couple of times, when Tanner played fullback, Siopis covered him really well. Like just when he was getting caught up the pitch, not even caught, but like he was up the pitch, the team would get it on the transition and they break, and Siopis would just come across and sweep up in that left back area. And I think you need that player. You need that player who does the simple things on the ball, but is also defensively aware, gives you a little bit of protection and stuff.
Willie Boland-esque type of person.
Yeah, I think. Is there anyone in the Cardiff side who you look at and you are like, I would not sell them pretty much for any price? Or do you think everyone's got a price and it's just?
I think everybody's got a price, and obviously following Cardiff as long as I have, if somebody comes in with a decent wedge of coin, then fans will always want to keep their best players. But like I said, football's a business now, so if they're going to be able to earn 6, 7, 8 million on a player, then there's players there potentially who could go on, and I think who could make it at an high level, like Mark McGuinness, for example. I know we missed the second half of the season pretty much due to injury, But since he had that loan move to Sheffield Wednesday and he come back, that loan move proves how good the loan system is, because he came back and he was a completely different player when he.
Yeah, the thing is, he played, didn't he? And this is the tricky thing with loans is, like, there's a couple of players in this squad now which I think if you could put them out on loan to a League One team or whatever, and be guaranteed that they'll be starters and start like 30 odd games, they'd really, like, you'd feel the benefit of it. Like Atete, I think if he went and played 30 games, gets a couple of goals, I think you see the benefit of it, and you can certainly see a better version of him. Joe Colwell could probably do with a loan, I think. Like, Reese makes a good point, and this is something which I talked about the other week. He says, my main issue with Ruben is he feels like he's 2 years behind where he should be now due to the lack of game time. Several managers didn't give him any time. He should be like a top number 10 in this league now. And I do think that's right. And I think one of the things I've talked about this season and going forward under Bullet is I want to see the academy system really utilised at Cardiff. Like, we have like a group of sort of 5 or 6 players who are either highly rated or have already shown a bit of quality at first team level. So, like, all right, we're a bit short of money, so let's get good first choices in, get a couple of like versatile players who can do a bit of different positions, but then let's have say to these young players, whether it's Conte, whether it's Louis Giles, whether it's Ashford, like, say to them, look, like, you're the substitute option, you're the backup. So if this player is, they're not going to play 42 games, 90 minutes, you are going to get plenty of football, because then over the next couple of years, when they start to, grow physically and mentally, and they're going to be so much more ready. Like, Ruben Colwell will be so much more along in his journey, as Reece says, if he had had more game time under certain managers, because he'd have had 20 minutes here and there regularly. And then when he comes to having his starts over the last couple of seasons, he'd be more prepared for it. Like, he's had to adapt to playing men's football at the same time as being dependent almost, So, and like, I thought he was one of the shining lights of the season, but certainly going forward. I agree with you. Everyone's got a price. Everyone has, like, realistically. What I would say is, I think there's a couple of players who I'd be genuinely disappointed if they were sold. And I think McGuinness is one. Like, I would not sell him. And it would take a big bid for me to sell him. Perry NG, I kind of already accepted that he's going to move. I'd prefer him to stay, but I kind of accepted that he's probably going to go. I'd be pretty gutted if Ruben goes. Who else? Siopis, I wouldn't sell him for nothing. Who else? I like, and then you got, like, I like Turnbull. I know some people think he's got a lot to prove. I think now that he's set, like, when he's gone through pre-season, I think he'll be more settled, more physically ready, and I think he'll hit the ground running. I certainly hope so. Like, Paul's made a good point there. He says, well, Ruben's injuries, the club could have perhaps dealt with him a bit better. And I think he's had a lot of growing pains, haven't he, Ruben? Because of his size, from what I'm led to believe, which is it's difficult then, isn't it? Because the club are trying to manage it. Actually, I would say this: last season, the club said they were trying to manage it. However, previously, I think if you look at it, he played 90 minutes. He didn't need to be managed at that point. Whereas last season, it seems like that was almost the excuse to rotate him and drop him. And what was frustrating last season was Bullet kept rotating him or dropping him, in my opinion, when he was on the back of a couple of really good performances. Yeah. Or like he'd take him off when he was doing really well, and it kind of killed our momentum. And I get it. They've got a lot of stats and information that maybe we don't have access to, about injuries and physical side of things. But he's a young guy. And when a lot of the time he comes off and he looks disappointed to come off, not like it's a pre-planned thing, or he understands why he's coming off. I don't know, mate. He's one I would be looking to decide. He's such a big guy, mate. He's a fucking unit.
But you go to that with his, like, the manager's tactics then, and why you do that, and then it's the kind of the flip side then when you look at Bowler and some of his performances. And I just wanted to mention it because he's done some good things, Bowler, and I know a lot of the fans didn't like his work ethic and his tracking back and that, which I totally get that, because I agree with it to a certain extent. But then he kind of he was one of his favourites when he kept playing him.
Well, I think all managers have got players which they like, whether you want to say they're favourites or they're the players they trust or whatever. And I think it is part and parcel of football. All clubs have got that, and all managers have that. But I would like to think that Buller has learned from last season a few bits and pieces, getting used to the championship, getting used to the playing in this country and stuff like that. And I would like to think there's one of the things, or a few of the things which sort of jumped to mind straight away, is he's got to be a bit more expansive at home and start a bit more aggressively. Pressing, attack, like everything just needs to be a bit more aggressive to get the crowd behind you, if nothing else. And move the ball. I'd like to think that he's able to look at the start of the season when we were moving the ball quite quickly and with a bit of purpose. And then later in the season, it became a bit sideways. And that was when we didn't have like a Ramsey or Colwell in the position, and it all became a bit negative. I'd also like to think that he's seen enough from Ruben from like Christmas onwards that he knows he can trust him, and he did seem to, as the season went on, like when Ramsey first got injured, he tried all sorts there, didn't he? He tried like Robinson there. He tried, I think, Grant played there. Turnbull played there. I'd like to think that he saw enough from Ruben Colwell that he's the next best option. And I think Ramsey at the moment, mate, look, as it stands today, if I'm picking the Cardiff side, I'm probably picking Ruben over Ramsey at 10. From a fitness point of view and the rest of it. Now, I
have heard regarding Ramsey that he's training probably harder now than he ever have, and I don't know whether that's personal choice for him because of obviously the season he had last season.
I know he chose to not go with Wales over the summer because he wanted to focus on having a full pre-season, and like people forget, he's probably never had a full pre-season since his injury to now, for a variety of reasons, tournaments and things like this as well. And because he finished up through injury a bit before the season, he's got a good 6 to 8 weeks from when he went, when his season finished to when we start properly playing games. He's got a lot of time to really get himself to peak fitness. Match fitness comes with playing the friendlies, of course, but from a fitness point of view and healing little knocks, and you hear players a lot, especially former players, talking about they never played where they were fully fit, where something wasn't aching or hurting or whatever. So I would like to think that by the time the season starts, he's fully fit and ready to go. Here's a question for you, then, mate. So take out the fact that I think Bullet likes 3-5-2 as well as his formation. Let's assume he keeps the same formation. If Ramsey's fully fit and ready to go, and he's where he was, when he came in last year, playing at a high level, would you still? So let's say Ramsey's in that number 10 place. Would you still try and get Ruben Colwell in there somewhere?
Or me personally, I would like to, because I think the more creativity and options we've got on the field, the better. Ruben can score goals as well. So even if Ruben's playing as a 2 up top then with someone else and Ramsey's just sat in behind him type thing. But we got to have as many creative players on our field as we can, because they've shown this year, we just haven't had it, or we haven't had the players on the park at the right time together then to create and open teams up. We just haven't had it, in my opinion.
100%, mate. Wales are losing 1-0.
That's ruined my night now. I recorded that. Cheers, Paul.
Mate. The less I talk about Wales at the moment, the better, mate. Me and Pan recorded a video on Friday, which should be out later this week, talking about it.
So I got a question for you then, because obviously you fired a few.
Mate, I ranted like mad on that video.
No, that's completely fine. So, but I just thought I'd put the spotlight on you now. So obviously the loan players we had last year have gone back. Would you want any of the ones back that we had last year? And obviously, is there any you wouldn't want to see back?
Just something else. I just on about raising money. I would probably sell Jack Alnwick as well. I think you could get some decent money for him, only because I think he wants first team football. So rather than keeping a player who's frustrated and potentially could cause a problem with morale, because I heard that he got a bit pissed off when Howarth came in. I'd probably
understandably as well, really.
Cool. 100%. He didn't do anything wrong. He deserved to keep his place, mate. But I just add him to the 4 that I said, to the 3 and him make 4. Do I try and raise some money? In answer to your question about the loan players, who do we have? We had Bowler, Grant, Esbrand, Phillips. Is that it? The 4 of them? Was there anyone else? Jeju.
Yeah.
So that's the 5. The only one I would have back is Grant, mate.
Yeah.
I'd have Phillips, but I think you've got to be realistic. Liverpool aren't going to want to loan him when he's in the last year of his contract. I think it would be silly for Cardiff to go and spend, a load of money on getting Phillips. Not a load, but like a couple of million plus wages on Phillips. He was on big wages.
We could probably strengthen in another 2 or 3 areas.
When you could get Kipre on a free if he would come, and you could Paddy McNair is leaving Middlesbrough on a free. I would snap him up as well if we couldn't get Kipre or Phillips. Like there is centre backs out there which you can get cheap or free. I thought Phillips was excellent.
Yeah,
I would personally, and this is only my personal sort of view, I'd rather have Kipre than Phillips. But if you're telling me we're going to have Phillips on a permanent deal, say, then I will. I'd be happy. I thought he was outstanding, and I think without Phillips, we would have been absolutely up shit creek when McGuinness got injured. I think we'd have had to play Perry in centre back probably. That was, or he'd have had to go to 3 at the back.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think the only thing that would.
I will caveat though, mate. I'd have Grant back. But I wouldn't have him back as a winger. I would have him as well because Cardiff need to sign 2 strikers, in my opinion, and I would have him back on a permanent. I wouldn't sign him back on loan. I would sign Carlin Grant on a permanent if West Brom supposedly want him off the wages and are willing to sell quite cheap. So if we could get him pretty cheap and he'd drop his wages a little bit to come here, I would have him, but he would be one of my striker options. So it's just hypothetically, let's say we sign Kiefer Moore, he would be my second striker, and he can play on a wing if we need him to. But I'd be looking to sign an out-and-out winger rather than sign Grant for the wing, if that makes sense. I like Grant. I think he's much more suited to playing through the middle, and I think I like his attitude, his work rate, and when some others sort of down tools or even not down tools, but like just had a bit of a cob on, he never, ever, ever stopped. Like even when we were getting, in some of the games where we got a bit of a dick in, he never stopped. And he always had the right attitude. And he helped Jamaru Collins when Jamaru Collins was struggling with a bit of confidence. And, in the early part of the season when Collins is coming back from that long injury and stuff, like I think Grant did a lot to protect him and gave him some support, probably a lot of support, which NG didn't get on the other side. What else was I was going to say something else then? And obviously you got Callum O'Dowda. You'd like to think he'll be fully fit next year, which gives you an option. If you need to save some money, you could bring in like Dramer as one fullback. And then you've also got Callum O'Dowda who can play left back or left wing. And he can also play in the middle of midfield as well. So I think
He had a good bit of feedback from John O'Shea, didn't he, after the Island game? I don't know if you've seen that.
He was very good, mate. He was. I saw the highlights of it. He's very good. Yeah. He's a quality player, mate. He just
again,
even when he came back last year, like you could see it, like the quality he's got, and then just a little sort of strain or little injury here and there, and he's out for a couple of games. I would 100% sign Cody Dramer. He'd be probably the first. I'd already have spoken. If I was in charge at Cardiff, I'd have already spoken to Cody Dramer and Kipray's and agents to see if they could come on a free. The third name, I said this on Friday, so I'm not going to dwell on it because I want to talk about potential striker targets. So people asked about Kiefer Moore on Friday. Would I go back in for him? And I said what I would do if I was the football club is I would ask the question, do you want to come? It's simple, yes or no. If he says, I'm not sure, we'll see how it pans out. No thanks, see you later. If he says yes, then get it done and get it done quick. No one wants to have that flipping drag on all through the summer. Will he, won't he? No one cares. No one wants it. Like, it's got to be an in and out. Do you want to come? Yes or no? If that means they got to contact him directly and say, do you want to come to Cardiff? Yes or no? And if he says yes, then go make it happen. Whether it's a loan, whether it's a signing, go and get it done. But I don't want to see it drag on. They would be the three players that I try and do straight away. After that, I think there's a lot of different options. Striker's a bit of an interesting one because
I think you'll probably use his experience of abroad, and he'll probably look to bring in, because the two he brought in Gutas and Siopis, outstanding. So I think Jonathan made a comment in the players that tend to be a little bit cheaper abroad, and I definitely think he'll probably look at that.
Well, here's an interesting one for you, which I was reading about the other day. Let me find him. I got the tab and I can't find it now. We were linked with him. He's from Scotland. He plays in Scotland, should I say. I'll bring him up now. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Today we were linked with Ian Pofeda, who was on loan at Leeds last year. I think he plays for Sheffield Wednesday, like it's his home club. He's 24 years old. He played a good sort of 20-odd games for Leeds. His stats are all right. He averages about just under 7 out of 10 per game. So my issue with him is he's as a wing, like a sort of attacking midfielder or a sort of winger. He's not that great with he doesn't work very hard. So I don't think Bullock would like him for a start. His crossing is quite weak, and he's got a tendency to hold on to the ball a bit too long.
Yeah.
So for me, those kind of attributes would be a red flag for this manager. Other managers might give him the freedom to not work back. And I mean, if we're asking Ruben Colwell or whoever's at number 10 to work out and be defensively responsible, then the winger's going to have to as well. And my view on him, mate. I said I would give the number 10, whether it's Ramsey or Colwell, the freedom to not worry too much about, defensive work. Yes, press. Yes, get it, drop in and make us compact. But I'm not too worried about Ruben Colwell getting back by our own area to win tackles. Like, that's not what he's in the team for.
No. So another question for you, a minute, going slightly off topic because you just mentioned his name there, Aaron Ramsey. What would be a good season for you next year? Would it be 20 games? Would
I said
a realistic target, do you think, for him?
I said at the start of last season, if we can get 20 games out of Aaron Ramsey and 20 games where he's fit and he's at his level, I think Cardiff will do very well. Because if you can get 20 games out of him, then you've also got the other 22 where you're going to have Colwell in there. Like, I'm pretty comfortable with that, mate,
Yeah.
But I'd be disappointed. What did he play last year in the league? 12, I think it was. Yeah, that's disappointing, that is, mate. Considering I know he took a massive wage cut to come here and the rest of it. I understand that.
And I just hope he has a better season fitness-wise and he hasn't got a cold time on his career because of that.
Yeah, it'd be a shame, wouldn't it, if he retires?
If he has a successful season this year and get us to the playoffs or whatever it may be, and he
a bit like Bellamy did, mate, isn't it?
A
bit like Bellamy did when he came here and he sort of got us over the line after we'd come close. Right, so that's the one I was on about. Theo Bear, he currently plays for Motherwell, and we've got a really good record with players who come from Scotland, isn't
it?
Yeah. He's quite tall. He's Canada international, 27. 24. He's got a good age. Last year, he played 33 for Motherwell, scored 13, 4 assists. He's aggressive. He can play. He plays through the middle, but he can play wide as well on either side. And he'd probably be like was it Jonathan said about like players being cheaper outside of like going to Europe and that. I think signing players from Scotland is a similar sort of thing. They end up being pretty cheap, don't they? So like to me, he's one I would definitely have a look at. Whether he's I don't know what sort of price he'd be, and because there's a bit of a risk to it, of course, but I think the Scottish Premier League against like the top half of it is probably Championship level, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then you never quite know, do you, in terms of
some
of the games. You can only play you can only play against what you're playing against. And I mean, he's got an average of just under a goal every other game. Scored 14 goals in 29 games, 5 assists. So look, that's pretty good, mate. For some, Motherwell, and they're not Rangers and Celtic, where they're smashing. And just looking at his average player ratings, he playing through the middle, either as a 10 or an out-and-out centre forward. He averaged 7 out of 10, just under 7 out of 10, literally just under 7 out of 10 as a centre forward. He averaged just under 8 out of 10 as an attacking midfielder, but he only played a couple of games there. But then on the wing, he averaged like 5 out of 10, which obviously would indicate that he's stronger as a centre forward. He's got really good link-up play, which I think is something that we really rely on for the system we play to work. Your centre forward needs to be able to link up and create space for the wingers, and then number 10 to kind of to get in and beyond the strikers. His finishing is really good. I'm just looking at his stats now. So look at his XG. Yeah, so like in terms of like chances to goals, it's really high. Like his XG was averaged 15.8. And what did I say he scored? 14?
14, 15? I think, yeah.
So like that's pretty much bang on for like you give him a chance and he'll hit the target. Like, so for me, look, you got to weigh it up all. You got to weigh it all up, haven't you? You can't just go on stats. I'd be lying if I've said I've seen loads of him. I've seen I did a bit of research on him today and yesterday. He looks pretty good. Not the best at pressing, but that could be coached pretty easy, can't it? Like, tell your striker to move his fucking ass. Apart from Kiefer Moore, mate, talk to me about strikers. I know we were linked to that Seville forward, Musa Drama, I think it is.
Yeah, to be honest, I probably haven't done as much research into it as probably you have. I wouldn't take anybody like Jeju we had on loan last year. I don't think that worked out.
Didn't even look like a footballer, did he?
Yeah, and it's definitely an area we need to improve on because we didn't score nowhere near enough goals really. And I know obviously we got to create them chances, but any chances we did create, our finishing wasn't good enough. I don't know if Mate is going to figure too much this year, depending on again what we bring in. Does he figure playing up top, out wide?
Do you know what? I always forget about Mate. I always forget about him. And it's no disrespect. Like he doesn't do it for me, mate. I got to be honest. I thought he did better towards the end of the season, but he doesn't really do it for me. I think
he does. I think he does better when he plays out wide rather than.
Yeah, you said that before. I think his link-up play is really good when he plays through the middle, but then when you put him in front of goal, he seems to go to pieces. I just want to bring up this comment because Jonathan's been talking about this Ryan Hardy from Plymouth a lot over the last couple of weeks. So I had a little look at like the stats and whatnot, and he looks decent, mate. I got to say, like he's 27, so he's a pretty good age. Scotland and under 21 international, plays through the middle, currently valued at about 1.5 million, but that's not an exact science, is it, on the internet? But he's also, his contract expires in a couple of years, so he has got a couple of years. But I know Plymouth are trying to move on some players. It's whether, obviously, they have got, people will say like Rooney's shit as a manager, but that will influence some players, particularly strikers.
100%.
Like if I'm Ryan Hardy, and I can he might want to stay at Plymouth to work with one of the great Premier League strikers, because he might think, well, if anyone's going to improve me as a player, it's going to be him. So, I kind of think people underestimate that sort of side of it. He scored 12 goals in 40 games in the Championship last year. What I like about that is he played 40 games in the Championship. So he was fit and available. He played 45 games in total with the cup games. And that's something which I think we've got to start looking at and considering, is like how many games players play. Because we can't sign players and then... No, Jonathan, I accept what you're saying. So Jonathan says like they couldn't attack under Rooney. I just mean as an individual, if I was a centre forward and Rooney comes in, regardless of whether he's good manager and whatnot, he could advise you as a striker, can't he? Do you know what I mean? Like, I just think you could consider it. One of the things a couple of the things which stood out to me about Ryan Hardy, I thought he's really good in the air for like flick-ons and things like that. His link-up play is pretty good. He's really good on I saw a couple of clips where the midfield win it on about the halfway line, and Ryan Hardy makes really good runs like in behind on the break. And I think that's something that we drastically lack last year, was a striker who would run in behind. We just never seem to be able to get the wingers and the strikers like running in behind the fullbacks or in between the centre back and the fullback. He averaged just under 7 out of 10. And I think that's really good considering he played, like that was over 33 games. So it's like quite a considerable sample size, isn't it?
Do you think he'll have a look at Isaac Davis this year? Or do you think potentially you might loan him out again?
I think he'd be stupid not to have a look, mate. I think anyone would be stupid. But I said this Friday, if Anderlecht or Monaco come in with 3 million, do you really see Cardiff City turning that down for a player who hasn't quite done it for us?
No.
I just don't see it. Like I would, to me, what I would like to say with Isaac is he couldn't have done more on that loan.
No.
Like he scored goals, he got assists, he got high player ratings, his stats are good. He got player of the year. He couldn't have done any more. So regardless of what you think about the standard and that, you can only play what you up against. And other players like Ojo was in the same league, in the same team, did absolute jack shit. So you can only play against what he's playing against and with what he's got. And I don't think he could have done any more. On the other side of that, what I'd like to see in pre-season is normally we see like a first team sort of play, don't we? And then we see like the kind of second string and the reserves with a couple of youngsters play the second half, or first half. They kind of split it that way. I'd like to see Isaac Davis playing with the likes of Ramsey and Colwell and these players as Siopis and that. Yeah. So you can get a real feel for how good he is. I'd also like to see him play with those players, but play through the middle, because I think his future is probably as a number 9, probably. But we've got to have a look at him. We'd be mad, mate, to not have at least have a proper look at him when he's come back and when he's had those sort of numbers. And just very quickly, mate, sort of before we look towards wrapping up, one player who I think is worth a look on a cheap is Will Evans from Newport.
Sure.
26. Well, he's 27 in July. Can play centre forward, can play wing, can play midfield. Very versatile. You need those versatile players. And what I like about that type of player who's versatile, not just him, but like the players who can do a bit of like they got their position, but they can also play wide or in midfield or whatever, is that allows you to trust the youngsters in the squad more. Because if I know I've got Callum O'Dowd there who can play left back if I need him to, and say Jamalu Collins is the first choice, Jamalu Collins needs a rest or is injured, I can put Louis Giles in for 20 minutes or Louis Giles in for a start in this EFL Cup game. And if he struggles a bit because he's young, he's 17, 18, right, next game I can put Callum O'Dowd in there. Whereas if you haven't got those versatile players, it almost feels like you can't go with your first choice and then your youngster underneath it, because if they do have a bit of an issue with nerves or confidence or whatever, it can then create an issue, if you get what I mean. But then I wanted to be part of Cardiff. Cardiff have to use. We got this wicked academy, mate. It's so like it's top tier.
Yeah,
we've got a few players now coming through. And by the way, Craig Bellamy deserves a massive amount of credit for the work that he put in place when he was at the football club. But we have to give him game time. Like Reece said earlier in the show about Ruben is probably a little bit behind where he should be, not through necessarily his fault, but because the managers haven't given young players enough game time. You know, like let's look at Conte. To me, if NG goes, Conte's competing with whoever comes in for that right back position.
Yeah,
because I thought he caught the eye. Ashford the same on the right. Whoever's our right wing options, Ashford's a genuine option for that. Whether it's off the bench, whether it's starting. Louis Giles, mate, I thought was really, like, for someone so young, I thought he caught the eye as well. So
yeah, I think the couple of youngsters who come in and were given minutes towards the end of last season, made a real good account for themselves, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be hard. I know they're in and around the environment with training and things, but obviously, to step out and play first team football, and it's a lot of pressure on young shoulders. And like I said, I thought they'd done really well.
So my thing with Will Evans, I'm not saying like we should go all out for him and whatever, but I'm saying like if money's tight and we get a first choice at centre forward, he's not a bad sort of cheaper option who may or may not be great. You don't know. He's had one good season at Newport. Can't forget, like 3-4 years ago, he was playing for Cardiff Met, which is, a big drop in level. But I do think these types of players are worth a punt, mate, from Newport. Like, because if it doesn't work, it's not like you've spent freaking millions. If it does work, bargain. He's a good age.
And would his level go up playing with, exactly no disrespect to Newport County, but would his level go up playing with higher caliber players, within the Cardiff squad?
Yeah, and I mean, like Reece says there, I'd rather play Ashford, Tanner and co than spend money on Will Evans. But none of them, certainly at the moment, can play through the middle as a centre forward. Now, if you were saying to me, we're going to play Colwell and Ashford as like a bit of a combo up front through the middle, then yeah, okay, maybe. But I just think, and Jonathan makes a great point, Will Evans would come in, he would be so hungry to prove himself at this level that it would be, I think he'd be the perfect backup. So if we're thinking, right, we need two strikers, and I'm going to use Kiefer Moore as the example just because he's a name that everyone knows, and we know that he'd be first choice. So Kiefer Moore is your striker, and then you bring in Will Evans as his backup. I don't think that's the worst thing, because you've still got the likes of, an Ashford or someone, maybe Carlin Grant if he comes back, who can play through the middle if they're needed. But I think it's worth a gamble, mate. Like,
I just hope we do business early doors and we don't drag it on.
100%, mate. Like I would love, now the manager's in place, mate. And although I don't think they still haven't confirmed Rowbury as assistant manager, which is a bit weird, but I know they brought him in. They've brought a couple of analysts in. So it seems like he's getting the backroom structure he wants. And look, with the kind of the analysts and the backroom, that side of the backroom structure, sometimes you don't see the benefit of it for like 18 months because obviously they've got to go and do their thing. But I would like to think that Bullock now he knows he's going to be here for 2 years. I'd like to think he already has given the football club his list of players he'd like. Yeah. And we're going to like hit the ground running, mate. There's no excuse for it. Like, to me, like we should already be speaking to clubs and agents so that when the window opens, try and get as much of your business done as early. If Perry NG's going, mate, let's sell him. If he's not sure, or there's a certain price that clubs have got to hit, and if they don't hit it, he's staying, then fine. But like he's got to be clear and not be dragging these things out. Robinson, Romeo, they don't like the manager. It hasn't worked. Thank you very much. Go. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's get it done. Jonathan makes a great shout, and it's a player I really, really like. Where's he gone? Should inquire to Fulham about Stansfield. I think he was on loan at Birmingham. Yeah, mate. He's the one his old man played, and he played for the same team, didn't he? And his old man died. Jay Stansfield,
Exeter or something like that.
Yeah, I think so. Something like that. And he went. So then he played for the same team. Eventually, sort of got to the first team, got the same number as his dad, and then scored on his debut. Or it was like, proper like Hollywood moment stories. But he's a proper player. He was in the maybe cup? Did we play Birmingham in the cup last year? At some point, I think we might have, but I can't remember. Well, I did a preview against Birmingham, and he was my one to watch earlier in the season. I think he's a real good player, and I think Fulham would definitely be interested in loaning him, if not selling him. He's definitely someone. Let's have a look. Look. Yeah, I think we'll have to wait and see with the backroom staff. Like, it's weird that they haven't announced them because, like I said, I was told, and I'd read somewhere else as well, that they sort of were done. The analysts were done before Bullock was done. So it's a bit weird they haven't announced it. But then maybe, I mean, the one really is the Rowbury one. Like, I'd be surprised that hasn't been announced. A couple of players I would like Cardiff to have a look at, mate. Not necessarily saying that they should sign him, just maybe, little inquiry. Apart from the ones we've talked about, like Dramer and Kip Bray, these players. Paddy McNair, I think, is an interesting one. He wouldn't necessarily be like my first choice, go and get him. But I'm kind of interested in him if we weren't able to get the likes of Kip Bray and Phillips. I think he's a good backup option. The problem being, because he's on a free, by the time you get to your backup option, he might have already gone somewhere else. So you've got to be very clever in how you go about it, I guess. There's a winger from Blackburn, completely forgotten his name. I think it's like, what is it? Like Tyler Reese or something. I can't remember his name. It's not that. I'll have to dig that one out and do a little scout report on him. Musa Dramer from Seville's. He's a centre forward who's been linked with Cardiff. Helped their B team win promotion last year. It's quite an interesting one. 22, so like a great age for a striker. To try and get like a young striker in. Because if it comes off, you've got a striker for at least a few years who's going to do it. Well, I saw
Tyree Stolen. Was that
yeah, that's the one. Right, mate, I'm going to have to wrap it up there. Partially because I'm absolutely desperate for the toilet. Haven't stopped tapping my feet. Tyree Stolen. Yeah, no, mate, I did a little, I mentioned him about a month ago. Then hopefully next week, we're going to have some scout reports on some of these players, which is always a bit of fun. We've also got videos on Robert Page. We've also got a longer video on the atmosphere, the attendance, the crowd issues at Cardiff as well, which was a really interesting conversation. We got all the live shows. Got a journalist coming on hopefully this week as well. I'm interviewing a former Wales international soon as well. So like loads and loads of stuff. The Flower Hour. We've got the Friday Night Lights with me and Pan. We got, what else we got? I know we got loads of stuff.
Keep your eyes open.
7 days a week. Pervader, that was the one we talked about earlier as well, wasn't it? Right, I got a chip, but I appreciate you all. Please like, subscribe, tell your mates about Cardiff City World. It's on an upward curve. Cardiff City content 7 days a week, and the more subscribers we get, the more content which will come out. So, like, once we're cooking at like 1,000, 2,000 subscribers, be like 2-3 videos a day, or 2 videos a day, and a live show. We'll be absolutely roasting. But that's what it's all about. Support the channel, support the boys, and make some noise, as they say.
Happy days.
Thank you very much, mate. I know I just talked constantly for about 10 minutes there, but I need the toilet.
I love it. I love spending time with you, my friend.
Mate, everybody does. No, it's because I need the toilet, mate. So I'm just like, I haven't even drunk Monster since this morning. Right, in a bit. Thank you, my friend.
Catch you later, guys.